Okay, so I've finished the Longshot 4. I still have to balance it, but construction is complete. This has turned out nice. It's great, actually. So it's an old design. Still a nicely built airplane, though. I would say it's a really good value for what it costs. I spent more to put really good servos in it because I'm a big believer in that, but the airframe is very nicely built. It needs some modernization, though. It was calling for push rods and all the old stuff, basically, that you would have done 20 years ago to one of these. But with the modern ways, I've upgraded this thing. It's turned out nice. So I've still got to balance it. It's going to need a little nose weight. I had to go with these. I wanted to put a 1,000 milliamp pack I had in it that would have balanced it right on the nose, probably with very little nose weight or none. But the form factor wasn't good. It just didn't fit right. So these smaller 600 milliamp packs fit much better than I have. It's going to require probably 8 or 10 grams of lead in the nose, though, to get it to balance out. We'll see. I'm going to do that here in a bit. But so modification-wise, these are XO6s in the fuse. Pull spring, of course, with beadle-on wire. I did as in my previous video, I did the wing top drive with KST A08s in the wing. That's just some temporary tape for balance point. The factory balance point they're saying is 80 millimeters back, but I calculated the mean aerodynamic what am I looking for here? Chord, and then took 43 or 35% of that, and it's actually about 83 millimeters. So I like my planes on the rear side anyway. I like them to be less stable and more apt to show lift. So I'm putting it back pretty far. I can always move that forward a little bit. I'd rather start back a little bit far and then move it forward personally. A lot of people do the opposite. Start with the CG way forward, then move it back. I'd rather put it back on the edge of unstable and then move it forward a millimeter or two at a time. But I think it's going to be good, probably around about 83 millimeters there. So the top drive worked great. I did not make the horizontal removable because I modified the pylon that came with the kit. It was like 2.5 grams. It had a rigid plate on it that was unneeded, so I ripped that off and just used the pylon part of it and glued the vertical on because it's flat bottomed anyway. Ran the pull spring center through the pylon, and then at the back there's a little bit of tubing as well. I just notched the tail itself and glued, epoxied it on it with some little tiny fiberglass patches. Very tough. I used my own horns all the way around. What came with the kit, honestly, I just didn't like them. I have my own fiberglass horns from another source, and they're a better shape and a better profile. With the, let's see, there's loads of room in the nose. I'm very careful about my wiring. That's an AR6610T Spectrum receiver with the case on, because I mean, why take the case off? You need nose weight anyway. So I left it on. I made my own servo tray there. That's the balsa that came in the kit, but then I painted it black just because I'm OCD, and I actually put a strip of fiberglass on it because it was just straight balsa with the grain running the wrong way. It's super tough as it is now. There's a strip of glass under this uni. I don't know, it's overkill for sure, but yeah. So as is, it's 292 grams. I'm hoping it's gonna need, I don't know, my goal was 300 or less, which is light for this plane. Most people get them into 320, 330, 350 grams all up weight, and they're still flying nice. So this one is going to be right around 300, maybe a few grams over. I'm hoping maybe right at 300 once I put some lead in the nose. That should be decent. I know that's heavy by today's standards, but for this model, that's actually pretty light. All the reading I've done, I haven't heard of anybody coming in really much under 300 grams. I think one guy had one like at 290, but that's about as light as you can get with this thing, just because it's laid up tough. The wing is very tough, actually, but all the programming is done. Plenty of landing throw, normal curves for that. There is a rudder. My previous ships recently have not had rudders, but I went full house on this one just because it calls for it. Oh, the peg was awful. The kit called for an old-timey just carbon tube way in the leading edge of the wing, which is totally wrong. It would have been right on the CG line, just about where they wanted it, and that's no good, we know nowadays. So I added a 3-ounce piece of carbon patch top and bottom, and that is a peg I bought that's a spare part from an NRJ. Hyperflight had one in stock, so I ordered that with the plane. It was an extra $10, but that's a much better peg, and it's about 2.5 centimeters behind the CG line, which is where it ought to be. So that's going to help tremendously from what I'm reading as well. As you don't want to put just a tube in a wing anymore, especially at the leading edge. That's silly. Of course, nobody knew that 20 years ago, but we do now. So normal flight modes, speed, cruise, and thermal. I don't do a thermal 2 or any of that stuff. I just don't think it's necessary. Landing flaps with the curve. I did put just a little bit of snap flap in there because I really like it. Only on full, like closer to full elevator pull. I don't do down snap flaps. I don't think that's necessary. Only on the up pull and only toward the top of the pull. So on an extreme elevator pull, you get a little bit of kick with the flaps, but only like the bottom 30, bottom 30% of an elevator pull. And down, there's no flap movement. So yeah, I'll try to maiden it today, hopefully around dusk if the weather is nice. We'll give it some tosses. It's ready to go once I balance it. So cool.